Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're cracking open a book that is basically the original cutthroat corporate playbook, Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince. If you're a CEO preparing for a hostile corporate takeover or an executive navigating a volatile market entry, you're going to want to listen up. Written in the early 16th century, we are completely skipping the utopian ideals today. This is a highly pragmatic, historically grounded briefing on the unvarnished mechanics of survival and dominance in the real world.
We've got a lot of ground to cover, so let's quickly map out our agenda. We'll be hitting the landscape of power, acquiring the state, the armed foundations, the prince's reputation, better feared than loved, and finally, the art of deception.
All right, part 1, the landscape of power.
To play this game, you really have to understand the board. I want you to think of yourself as an aspiring new prince, or, in modern terms, a new CEO or startup founder. Machiavelli divides all powers into republics or principalities, and we're focusing on the latter. A principality comes in two main flavors. First, there are hereditary ones. Think of a legacy family business, where the bloodline has been in charge forever. And then there are entirely new ones, acquired through conquest or sheer ability, kind of like a disruptive new business stepping into the market, which ties right back to Machiavelli's warnings in Chapter 1 regarding the unique risks new ventures face.
Now, comparing these two, and Machiavelli dives deep into this in Chapter 2, holding a hereditary legacy state is honestly a breeze. You basically just have to avoid messing up established ancestral customs. Don't break what's working. But a new state, man, that is infinitely harder. It's totally rife with difficulties. Why? Because human nature dictates that people will willingly rebel against you, deceiving themselves into hoping that a new leader will magically fix all their problems. It makes newly acquired territories or freshly merged companies incredibly volatile.
Let's move to Section 2, acquiring the state.
So, if these new states are so wildly unstable, how do you actually take and hold them? Let's look at King Louis XII of France. He is the ultimate historical checklist of what absolutely not to do when invading a foreign province. He made 5 fatal errors in Italy. Instead of protecting minor powers to keep the big players in check, he destroyed them. He actually strengthened a massive rival, the Church. He brought in Spain, a dangerous foreign power, and he didn't even bother to settle the territory or send colonies. Contrast this disaster with the Roman strategy of preemptive action outlined in Chapter 3, where they anticipated trouble and struck early. Louis, he just sat back and engineered his own total ruin.
On the flip side, look at Cesare Borgia. He originally acquired his power through the sheer good fortune of his father, but Borgia didn't just coast on luck. He built incredibly strong foundations, wiped out disloyal mercenary leaders, and pacified a totally chaotic region with swift, calculated cruelty. He did literally everything a brilliant leader should do. But then, sudden ruin. Why? Extreme misfortune. His father died prematurely, and Borgia fell deathly ill right when he needed his strength the most. It just shows that even the most ruthless strategy can totally collapse if you rely too heavily on the fortunes of others.
Section 3, the armed foundations. This takes us from high-level strategy to the actual physical mechanics of survival. Machiavelli has an iron rule here. Good laws simply cannot exist without good arms. If you evaluate troop types, you see exactly why relying on mercenaries or, say, entirely outsourcing your core competencies is a massive trap. Mercenaries have zero loyalty, they'll run when things get tough or actively try to overthrow you. Auxiliaries, borrowing in neighbors' troops, are even worse. If they lose, you're undone. If they win, you're their prisoner. You absolutely must rely entirely on your own people.
Up next, Section 4, the prince's reputation.
Let's shift to the psychology of leadership. Machiavelli completely abandons imaginary utopian ideals for harsh reality here. He says, if you try to act perfectly virtuous in a world full of people who aren't good, you are going to be destroyed. Think about the massive challenges of introducing new corporate policies, much like he discusses in Chapter 6. Being the nice guy doesn't always work when you're facing deep institutional resistance. A successful ruler actually has to learn how not to be good and how to use that ruthlessness strategically, according to absolute necessity, to preserve the organization.
Take money, for instance, liberality versus meanness. You'd think being known as super generous is a great thing, right? Well, actually, scratch that. If a prince tries to buy a reputation for generosity, he will rapidly drain his resources. To keep the act up, he'll have to heavily tax his citizens, which just breeds hatred. Strategic meanness, or running a really tight, thrifty operation, means you can fund the state without robbing your subjects. Over time, the masses actually recognize that financial stability as true generosity. Doing the thing that looks like a vice actually brings long-term security.
Section 5. Better feared than loved.
Okay, this brings us to literally the most infamous psychological question in political history. I want you to just pause and think about this for a second. Is it better to be loved than feared? If you're a modern leader, how do you answer that today? Obviously, the dream scenario is to be both, but since it's practically impossible to unite them in one person, we are forced to make a choice.
And Machiavelli's stark conclusion is absolutely brutal. It is much safer to be feared. Why? Because, as he bluntly points out, humans are inherently fickle, selfish, and cowardly. Love is merely a bond of obligation. Since people act in their own self-interest, they will snap that bond of love the very second it benefits them. But fear? Fear is maintained by a dread of punishment that absolutely never fails you.
But, and this is a crucial caveat, there is a line you cannot cross. You must inspire fear, but you absolutely have to avoid hatred. Hatred is fatal. So how do you avoid being hated while remaining feared? Simple. Keep your hands off your subjects' property and their women. Machiavelli drops this legendary, chilling observation to drive the point home. Men will forgive the death of their father much faster than they will forgive the loss of their inheritance. In corporate terms, tough performance reviews might be feared, but stealing someone's earned equity, that breeds pure hatred.
Finally, Section 6, the art of deception.
We are getting into the dark arts here, exploring the absolute necessity of breaking your word when it serves the state. You see, you don't actually need to possess all the virtuous qualities like mercy and faith, but you absolutely must project the facade that you have them. Pope Alexander VI was a total master at this. He basically did nothing but deceive people, yet it worked perfectly every single time because he deeply understood human simplicity. He knew the masses are incredibly easily swayed by mere appearances and immediate necessities.
Which leaves us with this final, provocative question. Are these ruthless mechanics still the hidden blueprint of modern corporate power? Let's say you're a CEO staring down a hostile takeover or navigating complex alliances in a volatile market. Machiavelli's Chapter 21, famously known as the Renown Blueprint, is exactly what you need here. It's all about what we might call the market stance. He warns that you must never, ever be neutral. It is always safer to be a true friend or a downright enemy. If you try to be Switzerland in a corporate war, you aren't safe. You're just a target with nice scenery. You have to pick a side before someone picks it for you. Failing to do so simply makes you the prey of the victor, to the quiet satisfaction of the loser. Instead, undertake great enterprises, act decisively, and be a true patron of ability, honoring top talent so they aren't afraid to innovate. I invite you to examine your own strategy and leadership through this unapologetic 16th century lens. Keep questioning, and thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.